Okay, so hi everyone. Thanks for showing up. Today I'm going to talk about, as an artist, AI is your assistant, not your competitor. That is my theory. Oh. Let's see. Cool. So I'm going to show a few use cases of how to apply AI. Then I will present a few proponents. I'll talk a little bit about the controversy. And finally, we will see some application of all this doing live coding. Maybe first I should say something about myself so you know why I'm actually here. It's thanks to Patrick, of course. And I'm a software developer, but I'm also a musician, and I've always been interested in merging these two interests. Usually they don't seem to fit together very well, but occasionally they actually do quite well. Like in this first example, we can hardly recognize, I was working for a composer who had to compose music to an animation, and I helped him to identify the bounding boxes about these elements to generate parameters that he would use for his automated composition. I'm also a guitarist, as you might have noticed, and when my guitar teacher tells me to practice harmonizing chords, the first thing I do is I write a script that finds out which are the common notes between chords, so my improvisation will sound more professional instead of practicing. So that's maybe an area where these things tend to compete. Okay, let's briefly talk about what can we use AI for. Let me put my clock here. So I'll briefly talk about text, image, and sound as application areas. I'm not saying anything new when I say ChatGPT, for example, from the company OpenAI. I'm sure you all have experimented with it. Then we have Google Bard, which didn't make a very nice entry, apparently. And there's Baidu Ernie. In the image realm, again, OpenAI was one of the earliest starters with DALL-E 2. There's Stability AI that released Stable Diffusion, and actually as an open source project with a few commercial spin-offs. And then there's Midjourney, which is an entirely commercial undertaking. When talking about sound, there's probably the most famous proponent is Harman AI. This is an organization that releases Jupyter notebooks where you can do experiments like random sample generation, or to regenerate a given audio file, or you can interpolate between two audio files. Then there's Google with MusicLM, and there's François Pachet, who is a researcher who is now working at Spotify, and he is very deeply involved in generating music out of a trained model. Maybe a few short words about OpenAI, which was founded in 2015. It started as a non-profit, then in 2019 became a capped for-profit. And it goes on, and this thing becomes bigger by the minute. And the release on November 30th of ChatGPT made quite a buzz, as you all know. I want to start now with the image part of application of artificial intelligence. And that is, the picture that you're seeing is from one of the proponents of using AI to generate images. I don't know if it's recognizable, but the thing after the I is a mechanical heart. So I love AI. This is what this logo is supposed to communicate. And the person behind it is Chris Castanova, who has a website called chris.art, which I recommend you check out. She has generated quite some buzz because she was the first person to have her AI-generated comic copyrighted. It took a while to attain this copyright. And then after a few weeks or months, it was revoked again because the Copyright Office realized, we're not so sure that this is actually a good idea to copyright it. So it was taken away again. Chris had only a very brief time to prove to the Copyright Office how she generated this comic. And finally, she got another copyright for the story, for the composition of the panels of her comic, and but she did not get the copyright for the generated images. And this is the state at the moment. So if you release a comic where you have AI-generated images, you have to know that the panels themselves, for the moment, cannot be copyrighted. And Chris, I also want to mention on her website, you will find like hundreds of, or maybe let's say dozens of tutorials how to create images using AI, and very specific information like how do you create a character that is consistent between different panels. And it's really, you can find a lot on her page. She's also using AI to generate season-specific images that she posts on Adobe Stock. And apparently this is so successful that her Adobe Stock income is paying for her Midjourney, her Midjourney abonnement. And she just picks a subject that is related to the season and posts it on Adobe Stock. She also makes tutorials how you can do this yourself. In this example, the subject on the left is generated by Midjourney, and she will show you how to use Photoshop automation to get this bar where you can put your personalized message, Easter, and apparently this image is her most successful on Adobe Stock. For the moment, she has suspended uploading pictures there because of the copyright situation right now. There are, of course, many people trying things with Midjourney, and in this case, you see really interesting. It's almost like a photograph with an anatomic anomaly. The same person a moment later, and it's not only the arms, it's also the fingers that seem to be a difficulty for AI-generated images, which leads to a meme from people who are against using AI to generate images. And this is actually a fun meme, but it's a serious subject because there are several things going on in this domain. The first one is GitHub Copilot, which I know quite a few of you are using already. There is a litigation going on because it is claimed that the software that this model has been trained on is GPL, has a GPL license, and this license doesn't include to be used to train a model. So there's this litigation going on. In the text domain, we have the problem that all these machines have been trained on texts that are found on the internet, and we know that on the internet you don't only find balanced and fair texts, but you find a lot of biased information. And if this model gets trained with biased information, it's going to spit this biased information out again. And if you use this to decide about credit for someone, the biases that are in these texts are going to be automated, which is going to further make this a problem. And on the artist side, there are the artists who are suffering from their art being fed into a machine, because if you like some artist's style, you can say, okay, generate a picture for me about with my house and me in front and a tree, and make it in the style of this and this artist. And then this means one job less for this particular artist. So there's lawsuits against Stability AI and Midjourney by 3 artists. And Getty Images is also suing Stability AI. And there's another dark chapter here, which you may have heard about, that was published in Time, where OpenAI actually installed a sweatshop in Kenya to have biased texts sifted through and decided whether they should go into the training material of ChatGPT. And these workers had to work for a very low wage, and of course had to face horrible texts because that's what they were filtering out. Another case is Sarah Anderson, who is a cartoonist. And she went through quite a trip also with her cartoons, which ended up in the training material of an AI. And so you could say, make a cartoon about my work situation in the style of Sarah Anderson, and it will look probably like this original that you see at the top. So these are maybe a bit darker sides about using AI in art. And so I would like to transition to maybe more positive part, which is when you try and use AI in a musical context. And there's live coding environments, of which you may have heard. Imagine you are at a club and there's a DJ spinning discs and people are having fun or dancing. Now you're already pretty close because now you just replace the DJ with a nerd behind his laptop who is coding live, and he's generating beats and people are dancing to this or chilling out. And maybe there's another person that is doing the visuals, which can also be live coded. So you have Hydra and Visor as examples that you can look up for live coding to generate visuals. And for the sound area, you have Sonic Pi. It's probably the most famous of the live coding environments. Then you have Tidal Cycles, which is up and coming. I mean, it's been around for a while, but it's getting more and more traction. And there are spin-offs of Tidal Cycles called Vortex, which is a Python port, and Strudel, which is a JavaScript port. And Tidal Cycles itself is a DSL written in Haskell. For these live coding environments to be able to not only create sound on the machine itself, but also to trigger external synthesizers or other applications, there are symbolic music formats like OSC, Open Sound Control, or MIDI. And to look at MIDI as an example, MIDI provides a real-time clock. It provides controller data. So if you want to open or close a filter, you can do this remotely using MIDI. And if you want to play a note, you can define the pitch and the velocity of the note. And I'm pointing this out here because that's what we're going to use later. A few words about Tidal Cycles. The first release was in 2009. It's written in Haskell, and it's a DSL. And it's a functional reactive representation for patterns using rational time. So what this DJ is doing is actually writing patterns, and these patterns are going to be fed to the title engine, and which will trigger a synthesizer. So this movement has led to something called an algo-rave, which is a rave, but as I said before, you replace the DJ spinning discs with a musician programming patterns, which in this case is probably the woman to the right, and the person to the left is probably doing the visuals, which can also be synchronized so that the visuals react to the music. The architecture of title cycles is you have a text editor which can talk via a local network on the computer to the title cycles engine, which will interpret these patterns, turn them into note statements, and these note statements are going to be sent to SuperDirt, strange name, I know, which is a synthesizer and sample player that is being coded in something called Super Collider, which is yet another open source project that allows scripting these kinds of environments. If you have experimented with sequencers or DAWs, digital audio workstations, you might be familiar with how these sequencers usually work. And they usually have like a 16th resolution for defining patterns. And then you can decide which instrument is going to play at which 16th note. In title cycles, the time concept is totally different. You have a cycle of a certain length, and if you put one event in there, it's going to play every second if the cycle is 1 second. And if you add a second event, it will be 2 events in this time, and if you put 3, it will be 3. Now, this all sounds pretty abstract, so let's try, and I'll try and make a bigger font. So I'm starting this Super Collider and SuperDirt, and in the next tab, I'll open the editor. Oh, someone always changes my keyboard to US. Oh, sorry about that. Now we're talking. Projects, title cycles. So I'm opening my editor, and let's make an example. So you see the line down here, which it says D1 $BD, which means I'm sending a bass drum to this output. I press Control E, which will start the title engine, and eventually you can hear a beat. Okay, now this is the time. Now I add a second beat. Let's see how this sounds. Okay, now it's twice the speed, right? I add a snare drum. Okay, you get the idea, right? So this is a rather strange concept if you're okay, now sorry about this. Okay, now we're going. Sometimes when the drummer has been sleeping for a while, it takes him a moment to get back in sync. So the interesting thing to me was when I was talking about this with Patrick, he said, "Come on, let's try if Title Cycle knows ChatGPT." And so we put in this prompt: generate Steve Reich's clapping music in title cycles. And wise ass ChatGPT first tells us what clapping music is, and then confidently puts out some code which looks very impressive, but doesn't run. And when it runs, it sounds like excrements. I'm sorry. So You can see here is some Wise's comment up here, and then there's, I mean, I didn't copy everything in here, but you can see it looks pretty complicated. So if you go to the original authors of title cycles, and you say, hey, I'm trying to do this clapping music thing, which maybe I should explain what it is. Clapping music is a minimal music composition by famous composer Steve Reich in 1972. And it's a truly minimalistic composition because you have a very simple rhythmic pattern that is played by one party, and the other party plays the same pattern, repeats it 12 times, and then shifts it by an eighth note. So the clap 2 here is the one who's shifting the pattern. So you see in the beginning it is synchronous. And then in the next 12 bars, there's the first eighth missing, and it's been rotated. So this is an operation that is very common to all of you. So it's simply just shifting this pattern around. And now here's one of the things that I love about live coding and these environments. When I explain to you what this thing does, it's rather simple, right? But if you look at this text, it takes a whole page to explain what's going on. And now if you look at the live coding, I asked Alex McLean because my attempt failed, and he provided this solution, and you see it's really short. It just explains what the pattern is, the clapping, and then it says it repeats this, and with iter you can kind of have counted from 0 to 11. So let's go back to title cycles and have this play. Oh, sorry. First the pattern. Four, 5, 6, 7, 9, 8. Okay, I think the panning didn't really work, and we didn't check whether it's stereo. But this goes on and repeats 12 times, and you can hear how these clapping patterns shift. And this is the moment where I want to transition to strudel. So what is strudel? Strudel is a JavaScript port from title cycles to JavaScript. So you can see the code for the clapping music is also very short. So since it comes from title cycles originally, you can see the same concepts apply here. Now, it also has this concept that if you put several events into one pattern, it will just squeeze them into the predefined cycle length. So why is this interesting? Because all of you, after this talk, you can call up strudel.titlecycles.org, and you can start playing around on your cell phone, on your laptop, or on your iPad, and you can explore rhythms and compositions that you can do on the fly. And one thing that I like to do is practicing rhythms. So let's try this one. So I have a 4 against a 3. And then I can say I'll remove maybe one of them and see if I can still manage. For example, if I remove this part, I can simply comment it out. This is something that you are very familiar with. So this is really cool. So let's try another thing. For example, another division. Let's say a 5 against 3. Okay, this works. So, really simple to come up with exercises. And maybe you're asking, so what's the purpose of superimposing 3 against 5? And maybe this is the purpose. This is my band Sonar, by the way. So you can see we're using weird tools to compose our music. And now I was in contact with the developers while I was preparing for this talk, and they were extremely helpful in providing things that I didn't manage myself. And so you can use this short code that you're seeing here to make a whole exercise with different superimpositions. You can say, I want to hear what is 3 against 4, what is 4 against 3, what is, let's say, 3 against 5, and then you run it. And so on. So it's really very inviting to explore rhythms and, as you later will see, also harmonies. And my recommendation, if you want to learn how to program in Strudel, just take a track that you like very much and try and build it using Strudel. So I did this. I just started with what I knew was the chords of the guitar and some of the bass line. That's all I remembered. And then I realized, oh wait, the guitar has some weird echo going on. Let's see if can we add an echo. So, yeah, that's better. And there's a drum beat going on. I will spare you the process, and I have to say this morning I added the wood block. I shouldn't have done this, but I couldn't resist. So thanks a lot. Okay, by the end of this talk, you will not like this track anymore. But let's try our best anyway. So, because you're going to hear it for a few times now. Okay, so I've been talking now for a few minutes, and there was no AI in there. Bear with me for a moment. I just want to say, if you want to experiment with Strudel, it's really very simple because you can compose your patterns at will. Like I have this thing called superimpose, where I have some audio or note already going on, and I can superimpose a delay. And that's the thing that you heard before. In the superimpose function, I can add any number of functions where I get the input and I relay it to whatever I want. In this case, I'm relaying it to a delay, which is the echo that you heard, and to a pan 0, which is hard left, and pan 1, which is hard right. The same thing is, we've been talking about MIDI. If I want to send out my notes not only to the engine in the browser, but I want to send it out somewhere else, there is, on Mac OS, you have something called IAC, which is inter-application communication, which means you can send your MIDI data onto a bus, and then you have any other application which is not related at all, and it can connect to the same IAC bus, and these two applications communicate. Okay, let's first prove that this is working. So I have superimposed down here, and I do another superimpose. Oh, it's already happening. Okay, so I'm superimposing this and say, send this to MIDI. Now, if you don't want to listen to the track, you just use layer instead, which I'll pass this by. And now let's see, let's quit, or no, let's open a new just to show you that there's actually MIDI going on. Okay. If I stop this, no more notes coming. I hope you trust me that this is actually working. Or we do the superimposing again. Okay, so apparently there are some MIDI notes coming in, right? So what is the next thing that we're going to try? Of course, we are going to ask ChatGPT, can you do a visualization for me? Okay, so I said this and ChatGPT replied with some code. Maybe I should explain P5.js. There is, for artists, there is a programming environment called processing, which is based in Java. And then, since JavaScript has become much stronger, this has been ported to JavaScript. And so you can use this environment to read MIDI, read audio, write audio, and do visualizations. So this is what the visualization looks like according to ChatGPT. I like it, but it's a bit simplistic, right? So I think I have not a lot of time, so let's try something else. Okay, I asked it to make it a ring buffer so that the oldest dots start disappearing, and then I say, can you provide a more engaging, great, can you provide a more engaging example, and so on. And now, you may be wondering, hey, this guy should be half rational, right? So why is he saying please and great and so on, right? So the reason is, you know, at the moment, when AI takes over, it probably will remember all the prompts that have been used. So it's a safety measure. It's a safety measure. Okay, I asked for a more engaging example. I'm not being very specific here. Okay. Engaging, I don't know. Okay, let's see. Sorry. I'm going ahead of myself. Sometimes things work out. When you say fluctuate, it actually understands what I meant, right? It does a fluctuating of the particles. And then finally, I want a more oh no. Okay, so now this visualization I like very much because it reminds me kind of 1960s, yellow submarine or something. But as you can see, the stuff is disappearing because these bubbles get bigger and bigger and the origin gets lost, right? So I asked ChatGPT to change the Z order, which means I want the origin to be in the front, and it just didn't get it. So I had to do it myself. Okay. So much for automation. Let's see. I'll change this back to superimpose so you can hear something. And damn. Now I'm starting another application, which is reading the guitar, transforming it into MIDI, and the visualization should react to my guitar. Let's hope it does. Okay, so maybe I should have tuned the guitar. So. Okay, well, thanks for the applause. Well, as you saw, the AI is doing interesting things, and it's inspiring me with all those bubbles. But you know, when it comes to the nitty-gritty, it takes a person to make it work, right? I had to. The AI doesn't know that it's covering its own animation. That's something where a human has to step in, and that's the reason why I believe that. The AI is your assistant and not your competitor. Thanks.